Okay, thank you. I hope the screen is visible to you.
Yes,
And
it's
yeah,
visible.
that's all good. Yeah. And audio is loud and clear. Yeah,
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. Thank you.
great. Thanks. Hey, thank you, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning if somebody is attending from US or some other location. So, welcome to Purview Days and taking a community session after a very long time. So, I'm really happy to do this. So yeah, these slides are kind of repeats. So yeah, please make sure that you stay till the end for the quiz and in exciting prizes for sure. So yeah, that's me. My name is Dev Chaudhary. I'm a cloud consultant lead at Rapid Circles. I have been with Rapid Circles for almost 13 years now. Started my journey with on-prem SharePoint, and right now I'm focusing on Purview, implementing information protection, data loss prevention, data lifecycle management, those kind of tools and technologies for various clients of Rapid Circle. Available on LinkedIn, happy to connect. So that's basically it. So I think this there will be some repetition about this in this slide because obviously we have been talking about purview since the day began. So a little bit of context which I would like to repeat based on my understanding. Okay, before I come to this, let me give a little bit of disclaimer. So whatever I'm going to talk about is less about technology, but how I have interpreted how purview or information protection or sensitivity labeling works. And this is my own interpretation. So whatever I say, take every bit with a pinch of salt and yeah, just get it verified whenever you are implementing for your clients and double check because things keeps on changing. Today it is something, then tomorrow Microsoft will come up with some change and things might change. So just be cautious. Yeah. So sensitivity labeling. Uh, when you start thinking about implementing it with it for your organization or for your customers, always try and come up with some methodology to help them to understand what sensitivity labeling is. So sensitivity labeling is primarily a classification system. It allows you to classify the content or containers that you have or where your data is stored. That's the primary objective of sensitivity labeling. So a label can be defined based on what kind of content it holds. So the content of the uh, file, email, whatever, uh, and the content can be based on different type of sensitive information types. I'm sure sensitive information type must be covered by somebody in today's session. So sensitive information types are like nothing other than like passport numbers, credit card numbers, PII information, and so on. So you can define your sensitivity labels based on the content it holds or the value of the content or context. So if it's a product design and if it is regarding your company strategy, marketing plan, which you don't want to which you want to make sure that it is not leaked to others or it is not available publicly, that kind of thing. But it will never hold sensitive information. So you cannot define it's completely in context to your organization or company's values. So value of the content and sharing boundaries or collaboration boundaries, like you are collaborating with externals, vendors, partners, regulators, auditors, depending on them, then that's a container based classification. So how to blend those? You will have to work with your clients, customers, or your own organization to closely understand what sensitivity label will help on based on what content or container or scenarios you are trying to classify. Sensitivity label classification does not mean it will always have protection. So you can have sensitivity labels without enabling encryption or protection. So you can use only for classification purpose only. Um, uh, Why to use sensitivity label without protection? Because there are scenarios like when you have to send out certain documentation to governments for auditing purpose, or you have to share it with external lawyers or so on. They may or may not be able to decrypt your content, or access the content. So in those scenario, it is at least good to have some kind of classification on your content, because you know what value it holds for your organization. So when you use tools like DLP, e-discovery, you will be able to map out, okay, fine, these are your key things or key assets that you need to protect without applying encryption or protection on top of it. Label names, obviously based on organization requirements, and you can always create sub labels to suit your needs. I would always recommend not to go beyond 4 or 5 top level labels, and you can have some sub labels as well, but try to limit creating a lot of labels. Like if you start creating labels per project, it will become unmanageable very soon, because project starts and they close out, they have a life cycle. Labels will not have life cycle, and it will kill your retention, it will kill your archiving and e-discovery kind of scenarios. So make sure that you have a very deep thought on how to name your labels and how to structure your labels as well. Okay, coming to the second point, content versus container classification. So content is basically file, documents, emails, reports. Uh, that is where you can classify the content and also apply protection if you choose to. And there is another sensitivity labels can also be used for container classification. You can apply it to team sites or SharePoint sites and so on. But the way sensitivity labeling works for container classification is completely different to how it works for content classification. So just make sure that you understand the bifurcation of it. For my session, I'll just focus on content classification right now, and within content classification, we will just focus on file level, because as you drill down into the details, you will see that, okay, fine, it is a little bit tricky, and you have to make sure that you have considered all the elements on how sensitivity labeling works for files itself. And when you apply it for containers, you might have to rethink your strategy. So when you start creating a label, you have these 3 level by default available. That where do you want to scope your label? Items, groups, and sites, which is containers basically, and schematized data sets, which is your structured data. So we will stick to the first part, that is items, and even in items, the files part. Just to cover a little bit of ground on, for emails, you have 3 different variants to apply encryption or protect your emails. Um, Office message encryption, advanced messages encryption, and sensitivity label with some kind of encryption on it. When you use sensitivity labels with email, you will primarily would prefer using a label which allows user to assign permission, because when you create a new email, you type to uh, who are you writing to the email, right? And that can be dynamic, that can keep on changing. Now, based on who are you sending email, the permission should be picked up from that, not predefined. So consider using assigned permission. Because of this complexity, Microsoft has recently split it out. Earlier, it was mixed, that if you create a sensitivity label for item or file, it will also pop up in emails as well. Now they are still in preview. You can create sensitivity labels specifically targeted to email and specifically targeted to file types. So be sure that you understand the difference and then design your labels classification. Coming to the files, when you create sensitivity label for files, there are broadly two types of permissions that you can apply. The first one is predefined or template based permission, where you predefine your permissions when you create the label, and you can assign permission when you do it. Let me give a demo for it. Just a quick check. Are you still able to see the screen for the one with the browser?
Yes, yes,
yes. Yeah, perfect. So I'll just create a new label. So I'll do a check. One check, check. Doesn't matter. Next. So I'll uncheck this, uncheck this. Before I go to file, I'll just quickly show okay, email part. And I'll skip the meeting part. The meeting itself is pretty complex asset in itself because it requires both files and emails to be enabled. Excuse me, to apply to meetings. So yeah, coming to emails, go next, apply encryption. You can always have a sensitivity label for emails targeted without encryption as well, just for the classification sake as well. That is also a valid use case. Excuse me. But if you want to apply with encryption, let's see what options we get. So you can, yes, we can have a sensitivity label targeted to emails with pre-assigned or template-based permissions. But again, then what will happen is whatever permission you define here, like, okay, my entire organization, so this my entire organization gets a reviewer permission. That will be the case. So irrespective where that email goes, only your entire organization will have reviewer permission on that particular email. And you will not get additional controls which are targeted specifically for emails, like do not forward and encrypt only. So that is why my assumption is that it is preferred to use let user assign permissions when you are targeting labels for emails. And then you can enable these two options, which is do not forward and encrypt only. So just to avoid a confusion, do not forward also does the encryption. Okay, so it is not only do not forward, so it is do not forward plus encrypt. But if you select encrypt only, then it will only encrypt the email and not apply the protection of allowing user to forward the blocking the forward of the email. So yeah, that's basically it. Decay has already been covered in earlier session, so not going to touch that. And that's basically it. And then you can use auto labeling based on the context and those kind of things. So I'll go back. Now coming to the part that I want to cover is files. Yes, files, and say next. So again, you can have sensitivity label just to classify the content. So you can have a label without protection. And then basically, if you use without encryption, then you don't have much of configuration. You can just apply a label based on context or content of it or sensitive information type of the file. Back. This is important. When you enable encryption, again, you have two a decision point here, whether you want to pre-assign permissions or you want user to assign permission. Now, just a note of caution here. In certain scenarios, if you deploy AIP UL client, that is Azure Information Protection UL client on your desktop, you will, let me show that if I have it. So if I have this file, I right click and I get a classify and protect. So yeah, this is AIP UL client or no. Why it is still called as AIP? Because this is based on the earlier name of the technology, that is Azure Information Protection. Later it was rebranded as Microsoft Information Protection, and now recently it was rebranded as Microsoft Purview Information Protection. So, but the technology is the same. So if you can see that if I use a confidential label, it forces me to apply custom permission. If I select internal, it still it has predefined permission as well, but it will goes ahead and also tells me that okay, fine, you can add a custom permission on top of it. Whether you want to do this or not, you will have to make sure that you have given a good amount of thought of it, because if you are going ahead and defining um, predefined permission in your label, then in what scenarios should you allow user to apply custom permission on top of it? Because then it will conflict on what has been applied during the label configuration and what user think is right to do. So those I would recommend to avoid those kind of scenarios. So if you have a predefined label configured, make sure that this custom protection custom permission is disabled. This can be done through a configuration which is available at sensitivity label policy level. uh, if you Google that, it's available in documentation. So yeah. Let me go to the next part. And the second option is obviously allowing user to use their own or define, pick their own permissions and or a custom permissions, and where user will always be prompted to apply custom permission. So specify the name or email address of those users and what permissions does that user want to give. So if I go back to demo, specify and protect. So if I do confidential, it will ask what permission should I give, and the name, always emails. So yes, sensitivity labels always work on email addresses. So if that person's email ID changes while its identity is the same, AIP will not work. So make sure when you're using AIP or MIP service in any organization, avoid changing email addresses. Otherwise, the permission would break for that user for whose email ID is changed. Next slide. So this is a little bit of dated information, but still relevant. When we are talking about files, now there are hundreds and thousands of file types, right? Um, so what Microsoft started with was a generic permission model, which is just apply the label and select some permission. And that generic model used to work on all file types specifically, but it is still not mature enough to get a granular permission. So it's a generic permission. When you apply protection on a file type, which is like a txt file, or not txt file, actually, that's a bad example. Um, uh, AutoCAD drawing file, for example, right? If you apply sensitivity label using AIP UL client on AutoCAD file, it will use generic permission because the AutoCAD file is not uh, MIP aware file type. So what it does, it creates a kind of a container and then adds the AutoCAD file into that container. So it's like a zip file, and then encrypts the file and protects it based on what permissions you have applied on that label. And that is why it also goes ahead and changes the file extension type. So it becomes really difficult to use. It's not very convenient. So every time that user wants to access that AutoCAD file, he or she will have to remove the sensitivity label. Then that AutoCAD file can be accessed in AutoCAD app, otherwise not. But I think AutoCAD does have some add-in to support those kind of file types as well. But please do validate it. So that is generic way of adding permission. And then later on, Microsoft came up with native. Now, native, what it does is it is much more robust and reliable and works seamlessly with Azure RMS service. So all these file types that you see on your screen for Office and non-Office, they will respect the permissions that you set in your sensitivity label and work accurately. So if you have given somebody a reviewer permission or a viewer permission, then that user will only be able to access that file with that rights. But in generic, what happens is either you have to assign them a co-owner permission uh, or nothing, because it does not get into the granularity of the permission, because it's kind of just a zip container with encryption. So make sure that if you're whatever file types that you are working with, you have validated, okay, fine, whether it will work with your native and will respect the permission model or not. If you are working with like non-standard Office files, then yeah, best, I would say avoid those kind of scenarios, because it spoils the user experience tremendously. Again, Microsoft does categorize Power BI as a file, according to, if you go here on this portal, it also puts Power BI in files, but do consider that it is talking about when the content is exported from Power BI to Excel, PowerPoint, or PDF, that too from a supported path, or the PBIX file itself. That's it. Whenever the content is in Power BI service specifically, the access control does not come into play at all, which you define in sensitivity label. You will have to make sure that you do your access control in Power BI service correctly, apply row level permission or whatever that is required in Power BI service. The sensitivity label will get reapplied to the content only when, or the permissions that sensitivity label has, or protection that sensitivity label has, will get reapplied only when that content is pulled out from Power BI service as an export to Excel, PowerPoint, or PDF, or PBX file. Then only it will respect the protection that you have applied or permissions that you have applied. Otherwise, it will not. Similar thing happens when you upload Word, Excel, PowerPoint files into Teams or SharePoint site. What Microsoft does, that it removes the encryption, but it also makes sure that it remembers the permission part of it at least. But in Power BI, it does not even remember the permission part of it. Yeah, so be cautious on that. Make sure that you understand this well. Um, and so let me check on the permission thing. Yeah. On permission sides, you also have user access to content expires. Um, there are very few scenarios that I can think of that you will have certain scenario where you will predefine content expiry date. This might be a good idea for a label where you allow custom permissions to a user, and then that user applies an expiry date on that file for a certain period of time. Like if you are sending out contract for a new joiner, that okay, fine, this is what we are offering, offer letter or something like that, then you can apply a sensitivity table with custom permission targeting to only that candidate, and also set a content expiry, that okay, fine, if that person does not accept the offer within X number of days, then that access to that content or that file expires automatically. That's one way. Uh, Allow offline access. You can define number of days that you want. Yeah, I would always recommend, if you are using encryption, make sure that you give a deep thought to this, that whether you want to use offline access or not. And when we come to assign permissions, there are predefined roles that are available, like co-owner, co-author, reviewer, viewer, and custom. Co-owner has all the rights. There is a detailed explanation if you go to this link, and it will give you. Just note that these two specifically permissions, that is reply and reply all and forward, or three, sorry, yeah, reply all and forward. These three only work in context of email. Rest everything works for files, email, and everything else. So co-owner, uh, below that you have co-author, which basically does not allow you to change the sensitivity label. Yeah, yeah. If you somebody has applied a label, then yeah, just one important point. If I have permission to apply a label to a file and I apply a label, then I become a co-owner of that file, irrespective of what permissions I have been given from sensitivity label configuration. So suppose I have two files, file A and file B. On file A, somebody has already applied a label confidential, and label confidential only gives me actually co-author permission. So when I go and access file A, I will not be able to change the label. But on other case where I also have permission to apply a label, and I go and apply label to file B, now I become co-owner or owner of that file, because I'm the one who is applying the label, is always the owner of the file, is treated as the owner of the file. So I become owner of that file, and when I share it to somebody else, they all will have co-author permission. And in that scenario, what can happen is, if somebody needs to change the label, that person will not be able to change it. It will be only the co-owner who will be able to change the label if needed. So make sure that you consider this, how permission works when you select or predefine permissions for any sensitivity label. And then there is reviewer, which also removes permission like print. You cannot copy and extract content of it. You cannot do save as and those kind of things. It also grays out or blacks out when you are doing Teams sharing or content sharing on your Teams or meetings. Viewer, obviously, you can just view the content. That's it, nothing else. And they cannot share, again, do screen sharing kind of thing as well. But you can still go ahead and take out your phone and take a snap. That's fine. But if you try to do a screen clipping using snipping tool or anything, it will black it out. That's that. Yeah, assign permission. So make sure that you have given enough thought when you design your permission model for each and every label that you are going to create. Auto labeling, again, it's based on your conditions, and if you want to use it or you want to drive end users, or you can make it mandatory for end users to apply the label. It is little bit of this disruptive user experience, but it is always good to have a user make a choice what kind of content he or she is working with. But again, that requires enough training and understanding that yes, user is aware of what kind of content he or she is working on. That's basically it on the configuration side. So let's just go back to other considerations. Nothing much. So earlier, you could not do co-authoring if you applied a sensitivity label on a file and you had that file in SharePoint. Now, the value of SharePoint is, you are able to collaborate with others. So later on, Microsoft came up that, okay, fine, let's enable co-authoring. Now, what co-authoring did is it changed how sensitivity labeling information is stored with the file. It was earlier embedded into as a file level metadata, but later on it was now for at least Word, Excel, PowerPoint. I'm talking in context of Word, Excel, PowerPoint only. It was moved into XML, so you can change the file extension, make it from .docx to .zip, extract the file, and you will find there is a label.xml file inside it, which holds the tenant ID and the label ID in it. Why this is important? Because if you have a label which does not do encryption, which is just for classification, for those kind of files, if you send out to your external collaborators and they also use sensitivity labeling, they can also apply another sensitivity label on top of it. So you can have more than one sensitivity label applied without protection, obviously, on single file based on what tenant or what identity is working with that file. Something to consider. But if you have a label which has protection on encryption enabled, then whoever has applied the encryption first will always be the owner of that content. Do consider what Office application are used in your organization, because all functionalities like built-in sensitivity labeling, co-authoring, and they have heavy dependency on what application versions you are using. Microsoft earlier made an announcement that they are going to remove the Azure Information UL client completely, but then later on they backtracked. Now they have said that okay, fine, they are going to support it, but what they are going to remove is the add-in which was added to Office applications through AIPUL client. So the sensitivity button was actually an add-on to Office applications, which was installed through, excuse me, AIPUL client. Now it is going to be off or removed in the next version. And now Office versions have the sensitivity button built in on all applications for the recent versions at least. So, and yes, Microsoft recommends to use built-in version rather than AIPUL version. So I had a one now GPO. This is an interesting point. So one of the clients that we were working on, they only wanted to release sensitivity labels only for files, not for emails. But earlier you could not do that segregation. So what we found out is that there are GPOs available to hide a particular button through a ribbon menu. So you can just go ahead and remove the sensitive button from the ribbon menu itself. So at least for Outlook desktop app, you could hide the sensitivity button so that people would not apply sensitivity label to emails. But again, it fails when the user is using Office web app or Outlook web app or Outlook on mobile. There, that user will still be able to see sensitivity button and apply sensitivity label to emails. But there is a way to go around if you are only targeting Windows devices or Outlook application on desktop. Again, when you're thinking about rolling out sensitivity label, consider what is your file type scope, what kind of files you are going to work with. The most convenient file types are Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and partially PDF. Rest all file types, it becomes really difficult to manage, and the user experience is not great when you apply sensitivity label on those kind of content. So do consider what value are you getting out of when you're applying sensitivity label to non-Office file types, especially. Or you can think of an approach where if you really have to protect that content, like some images or some kind of video material or anything else, can it be converted into Office file types to provide full functionality of applying sensitivity label with appropriate protection and so on, and ease of working for end users as well. Mobile access, yeah, again, when you apply sensitivity label for at least Word, Excel, PowerPoint, you are covered on mobile. No worries there. Even for email, if you use Outlook primarily as your mailing client for on phones, you're covered. But for PDF, right now you have a dependency on AIP mobile viewer, which Microsoft is trying to push away from because they want Adobe Acrobat or mobile viewer to support uh, sensitivity label within their app natively and not depend on the AIP viewer. But again, if you are applying sensitivity label to other file types like images or CAD files or something else, then you will need a mobile AIP viewer on your mobile device as well to view those kind of file types, like you would need in desktop applications. Um, Also consider apps that you use when you apply sensitivity label on PDFs specifically. Not all PDF applications support sensitivity label. Adobe Acrobat recently started supporting sensitivity labeled files. Edge does, Edge browser does, Chrome does not, Firefox does not. So forget about those browsers. Also, uh, uh, Adobe Acrobat PDF Reader does support, and they are going to bring out a functionality in a pro version of Adobe Acrobat PDF to apply sensitivity label directly from the Adobe application. That's a roadmap item and soon be available, but then it will require you a pro license of the Adobe tool to do so. What else? Yeah, on phones you will require AIP viewer for now. Yeah, that's PDF. Yeah, when rolling out sensitivity label, do consider connected apps. What do I mean by connected apps? So if you have some kind of applications which are reading the content of your files from SharePoint, like you have built a flow which picks up a file from SharePoint, reads the content of it, and based on that content, it is doing some kind of action. Now, those kind of scenario will fail if you apply encryption on it. If the label is unencrypted one, it should work fine. But if the label is with encryption or protection, this may fail. For example, like DocuSign itself applies encryption, and you cannot have two encryption applied on one file at the same time. So if you upload a file which has a sensitivity label with encryption and you try to upload it to DocuSign will not be able to work with those kind of files. So make sure that whatever file types, sorry, somebody can mute, please. Hello. Hello. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, if you have other applications who are specifically reading the content or extracting the content out of files, make sure that you test and you educate the user what label to use for those kind of scenarios. So yeah, there will be scenarios where you will think, even if I have created a confidential label, and according to your organization's policy, it should have encryption, but there will be certain scenarios where you might need a confidential label without encryption. So think about it. Macros, if you have Excel which run macros, they might break as well if the sensitivity label has encryption, because macros, what they do is they open the file and then they read the content, and if it is not able to read the content, then yeah, your files might not work. And again, sensitivity label always work in context of the identity who is logged into the Office application. So make sure that the identity has appropriate permission, obviously. So if you are using some kind of service account who is opening a file and reading the content, then that service account needs to have permission on the sensitivity level. Otherwise, it will not work. And ultimately, it's all about educating the users that what labels to use, when to use, why to use, what are the pitfalls, and so on. So yeah, that's basically it. What I wanted to cover. Pretty short session. I know it is already late for a lot of people in Saturday evening. So that's basically it for me. Thank you. Thanks to our sponsors and organizers. I hope you enjoyed the session. And if you have any questions, please drop it into Teams. I'll be available for some more time to answer those. Well, that's it. I have a few more slides, I think. Yeah. There is a cause that we are supporting today. Please make sure, if you can, donate to this great cause. And the next session, I think, is for the quiz. Hope you will participate into it to win the exciting prizes. Well, that's it
Yeah.
from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dev, for sharing the knowledge. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Now,
you.
just people wait for a few minutes. We'll start quiz section soon.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize you're waiting on me. Okay, so yeah. Hi everyone. Hi again. So whoever joined the other session, back again. I'm back again here. So I hope everyone can see my screen.
Good.
Not it. I think it's black screen.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
black.
let me just reshare. Is it visible now?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Perfect. I hope everyone enjoyed the sessions that we had. I was part of a lot, but like most of the sessions, and it was all amazing. I hope everyone learned a lot of new things. And the good thing is going to be we have wrapped the quiz also around all those fantastic sessions that we had, just to make sure that whatever we have gathered, we get a refresher out of it. So just to give you a reminder again, we have already seen these slides from all of our speakers. So we have a couple of prizes over here. I see this is an old slide that has been used. So apart from this, we have Microsoft Learn vouchers as well that will be given out to our winners today. Just before a little bit of housekeeping things before we start, right? We need to sign up on Confirm. So basically, you can either go to this link directly. I'm dropping this link on the chat window, and you need to sign up. Everyone got the link?
No, I think
Meanwhile,
you pasted
No,
in
not
the
sure.
wrong.
No.
Oh yeah, now you see it.
perfect. Yeah, I've just put the link on the chat. Meanwhile, Rohit, can we check if we have like everyone moved from the track two?
Yes, so Tushar, one more point. Hey, everyone, Vignesh here. Thanks for staying so late. So regarding the quiz, yes, please make sure that you sign up in that portal because that's mandatory for you to attend the quiz. And one more thing is regarding the quiz prizes itself. Right. So of course there are three categories, and then in addition to that, we also have the Microsoft Press Tour, which is nothing but the Pearson offer. Like for four people, we could give that. So in addition to the first three places, there are four more places also, which means That is a 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th place as well. And whomever comes in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 7th place, you would get a discount code which you could use to purchase either an ebook or a hard copy, or even any videos, any learning videos from the Pearson store. So you would get 40% flat discount, and this discount code will be only shared with the people who get the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th place. Yeah, just wanted to let you know that this is also there.
Sure. Thanks, Vignesh. So yeah, coming back to the bit of a housekeeping thing. So first, you need to sign up on this link that we have dropped. Just you'll find a sign up button over there, and once we start the quiz on the same page itself, it will start popping up with the questions. For each questions, you are going to get 10 seconds, and we'll be showing the questions on the screen with the shared as well. But you will be on the browser window. There is one that's a bit unfortunate for us at the moment, but all the physical prizes that we are looking at, that will be shipped only in India at this point of time. I really apologize for that.